So yesterday was my first day back on campus. I got 3 classes in person and then 1 online. And so I got up early in the morning. It's like 20, 30 degrees outside. It does get that cold in Texas. And I headed out to the campus. Of course, on the first day, parking is always a fucking nightmare. So I parked all the way in the back, like 2 parking lots over from where I usually can. And so I make this trek to the school. I get inside. I walk into my first class, and it is an auditorium. It is like a grand auditorium. It's 250 people in this class. And of course, me being the antisocial creature I am, I find like the most furthest back seat against a wall, which is like a weird, architectural design. Like it's literally like a crevice in the back of the giant auditorium, and it has a wall to the right of me. And that's kind of important to me because I'm not very good in crowds. And so I can see about 50 people in front of me, but I can't see the other 200 to the right, which is good for me because I get like sensory overload in big crowds like that. And I get very paranoid like in crowds. I'm just not good in areas like that. And so that one goes smoothly. You know, it's very daunting to see that many people in one giant room, but when you can find a place where you feel comfortable, it's all right. I will say though, with that many people, because that's not the only class I have like that, with that many people stuffed together, I'm bound to get sick at some point, unfortunately. I just think it's inevitable. But after that, I went on to my accounting class. I take managerial accounting. I have the professor I had last semester. She's great, so I'm glad I got her again. And that class is in a bit of a smaller auditorium area. I think it's about 100 kids, so we can kind of keep our space a little bit better. And after that, I went on to my last class of the day, and this professor caught my attention immediately. Not because he was charismatic or because he was high energy or anything like that. He's just an interesting character. He's the kind of guy who starts his sentences and doesn't really know how they're going to end. He takes long pauses in weird places and makes it a little bit awkward for like the whole class. We're kind of just looking around at each other and like slyly smiling because we don't really know what his deal is. And sometimes he kind of repeats things to himself, like he doesn't quite understand what he's saying, so he has to say it back to himself. And at one point he asked for a kid's name, said it back to him, then spelled it wrong, and then spelled it wrong again, like he was changing his name for him. I don't know what drew me in so much to pay so much attention to what was going on, because really the first day of any class, you're just looking at the syllabus. It's not too important. You can just read the syllabus on your own if anything ever comes up. And so the class goes on, we go through the syllabus and everything, and he stops every so often to talk about his past. And one of the things he said was that he was a plant manager for 30 years before he was a teacher for 20. And this is where he sort of drops a little gem of knowledge. I noticed that every so often, you know, he makes these little awkward pauses or he says something funny, but in the end he says like a very good nugget of knowledge. So listening to him feels like you're panning for gold. You're just sifting through a lot of random dirt and things that he says, and in the end you're left with a gold. You're left with this little piece of knowledge that really sticks with you. And what really stuck with me yesterday is when he started to explain critical thinking and how it is not only an important skill in management, but just in general. And you probably have heard this in school before. We learned a lot about it in English class, where you have to think critically about what the author is saying, but never do they have a concrete way to critically think. It's ambiguous. It's like you have to figure out how it works for you. But he didn't do that. He explained to us what it really consists of. And what he said was, once you identify a problem in the workplace, you have to ask yourself why this happened. And it can be as simple as this person wasn't working that day. And then you have to say, well, why weren't they working that day? Because they weren't scheduled. Why weren't they scheduled? Because their manager didn't schedule them. Well, why didn't their manager schedule them? You have to keep going lower and lower and breaking things down. And so a problem might not have that many steps to break down, but once you get to the bottom, you have a fundamental understanding of why you're having this issue. And you can fundamentally change your problem rather than having a temporary fix. And a thing that I like to do in the classroom that keeps me interested and involved is to sort of apply the things that they're teaching us to what I'm interested at the time. And that happens to be fighting game. And I think what he said there, where you start with the problem and you work through management to figure out where the issue is almost the same process that you can take to figure out any problem that you're having in game. And so you can ask yourself things like, why did I get hit there? Because I didn't block. Well, why didn't I block? Because I pressed a button. Well, why did I press a button? Because I thought it was my turn. Why did I think it was my turn? Because I thought he was negative. And then there's your solution. You just go into the lab and use that move that they used against you to see if they're negative or not. And once you figure out if they're negative, well, how negative are they? Can I punish it? Or do I just take my turn? And if they're not, then you can do the same process again and figure out why you got hit on your plus frames, like how you got your turn stolen. I know that was kind of a roundabout way of doing this, but one, I wanted to talk about my first day of class of 2022, and I also wanted to share a lesson I learned on that first day. I hope it helped you, and if you did, consider subscribing. Thanks so much.